Okay, we're going to take a look at four panel renders now. Uh, just like you'd see with certain paintings, where you have four paintings all together, or one canvas with white lines drawn between the certain areas to make four panels, all as one picture and connected. Sort of to give the illusion almost like looking through a window, but not actually having the actual window frame. And it's actually something that doesn't take very long to do, but this is something you'll want to do only in view when you don't have any other post-production options. If using programs like Photoshop or anything like that, you're not going to need to worry about doing this unless you're working with maybe an animation. But let's just go ahead and create these bars in front of our camera. And what I'm going to do is just take a flat plane and I'm going to stretch it out and just rotate it. I'm also going to grab our camera and move this so that it is positioned at 0, so it doesn't have any rotation. And this way it's facing directly at these objects that I'm going to be creating. And I'm going to stick them as close to the camera as I possibly can. So I'm going to grab our plane and look at it from some of the other views. I just kind of zoom in a little and just make this pretty thin. Adjusting this really depends on how separated you want your panels to be. But what we also want to do is, like I said, move this to the camera as close as we possibly can. And you can actually see within our preview where it is. And it doesn't need to be right up to that end there, but just this sort of sample that we see with sort of the fake lens sticking out. And we just want to make that just a tiny bit bigger than that. And we're using this guide of the camera as a reference to find out exactly how centered it is. And I can zoom in just a bit more, make that maybe a little bit bigger, using this crosshair in the center to judge exactly where that center is. Okay, so now we've got one bar done, and what we can do is just zoom out, copy and paste that, and then rotate it, holding down Shift so that we get an exact rotation. And I'm just going to move it up to the other part of that crosshair. So now we have this centered and the other piece centered, and we've got sort of these panels in front of our scene. But there's a few things we need to do before we go ahead and move the camera and actually do any rendering. First thing we need to do is edit our plane, the material on our planes. And first I'm going to actually group these together and then go to our material editor and make sure the default is selected if this was changed to another material. We did start with the default, but just in case. And then double click on our material editor. And under colors, we want to change this to white. And under the effects, we want to up the diffusion, the ambient, and luminous, and also turn off cast shadows, receive shadows, and click OK. So now we'll have just this white bar in front of the camera rendering, but not affecting the scene at all. It will not receive shadows, it will not cast shadows, and it will stay completely white. Now there's also another thing you might want to do, and that is zoom out and even make these a little bit smaller. If you wanted to, you could go in and grab each of these individual objects and just sort of scale them down, because they don't need to be so large since they're right in front of the camera. And we can just bring them in just a little, so we just have a little cross in there, just so we don't get it confused with the rest of the scene. And now we're going to grab our group object, go up to this last tab over here, and we are going to link it to our main camera. So now if we select our camera and we move it around, no matter where we move it, these bars will go with it. So we can have these linked to our camera and frame it up, and we can render our images like they were set up in a 4-panel render. So I can go ahead and click render on that, and we can take a look and see what it looks like. So now we see I have the same image, but it looks like we have 4 different images making up that one image with sort of this mock window frame or pseudo window frame in the center. And we could always go back in and adjust these planes so that they are different sizes if you want to thin them out. And we could add this little object and save it and add it into any scene and link it to the camera if we wanted to. All you really have to do is position it, and then you can frame your object and render it so it looks like one of those paintings that you'll see set up with 4 panels.